pressed into service. People with cars shoved over and made room for their neighbors. The buses were all but empty. What the black vote had not been able to do, the black dollar did. And we took our struggle to the streets.
And so it began, the relentless hammering away at Jim Crow, the absolute determination to take the Constitution and make it work for us and for everybody else.
Not only the people themselves and their hundreds and tens of thousands, but sometimes just one or two heroes, heroines, and in some cases martyrs, putting their safety on the line again and again and again.
In 1957, we integrated Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. 9 teenagers, led by Daisy Bates, field secretary of the NAACP, tried to enroll in the all-white school. There was a swift and violent reaction. President Eisenhower, whose sworn duty it was to uphold and defend the Constitution, was forced, finally, to send in federal troops to escort the youngsters to and from their classes.
In 1960, the sit-ins were born at a segregated lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, started by 4 black students from a nearby college campus.
And in less than a year, the movement had spread to almost every black college campus in the South.
One of the key people behind the scenes was Ella Baker, who taught the students about the courage, the discipline, and the history of nonviolent resistance.
In 1961, we sent freedom riders deep into the South to test segregation in interstate transport. The freedom rides brought allies in from the North. They were met by burnings and beatings, bullets and bars. Our purpose was to prod the Justice Department into enforcing the law of the land. The strategy worked.
In 1962, we integrated the University of Mississippi. James Meredith, a veteran of the United States Air Force, did not hesitate to walk the gauntlet.
In 1963, it was the University of Alabama and George Wallace's infamous stand in the doorway.
As governor, I am the highest constitutional officer of the state of Alabama. I embody the sovereignty of this state, and I will be present to bar the entrance of any Negro who attempts to enroll at the University of Alabama.
Wallace's adamant stand, made, he said, in the name of the Constitution of Alabama, was seen by many as an open invitation to violence. But violence under any circumstance is always a threat to law and order. In the end, the Alabama police had to intervene on our side, something we had very seldom seen before in the South.
The situation threatened to get out of hand, and that could call for federal intervention, something George Wallace did not want to happen to him.
My friend,
600 Alabama National Guards were called in to keep the peace. 2 black students would attempt to register at the University of Alabama, and the federal government stood behind them.
Alabamians were urged to stay away. 825 state troopers, game wardens, and revenue agents were standing by. All was quiet.
Governor Wallace was ready to carry out his pledge to stand in the schoolhouse door. A member of the faculty said, "This is just like the Late Late Show. You know how it ends, but you can't go to bed."
George Wallace, representing the state, took his place in the door of the last totally segregated state university system in the country.
Deputy Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach, representing the federal government, served Alabama in the person of George Wallace with an order to integrate their university system forthwith. Wallace refused.
President Kennedy, within moments, federalized the Alabama National Guard and ordered Brigadier General Henry Graham of Birmingham to remove George Wallace from the schoolhouse door so that Vivian Horner and James Hood could enroll.
General Graham sadly said that it was his duty under the order of the President and of the Constitution of the United States to ask the governor to step aside. The battle between states' rights and the authority of the Constitution can only have one ending. Governor Wallace, realizing the futility of his gesture, finally agreed.
There were no cheers, but also there were no jeers. Some Alabamians seemed ready to accept the change.
I think Alabama prepared for it. I think that's why it was so peaceful. I'm glad that it's over with. I think it should have been done a long time ago. I don't see any reason why they should keep any qualified nigger out.
I really don't mind going to school with them here, but I think all this is silly to have to take all this much trouble to enroll 2 people to go to school.
In May of that same year, we marched against Jim Crow through growling dogs and cattle prods, through water hoses in Birmingham.
To this day, of the sacrifices, the dedication, the endless courage of boys and girls, men and women, people of many races who gave themselves to this great chapter of our history, the half has never been told.
1963 was the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. That called for something special.
In August of that year, we held our biggest from Washington for freedom and jobs. It was a masterpiece of logistics, organized, planned, and rehearsed down to the last detail. Bay of Ruston.
The march made history, it made headlines, and it made the evening news. That was significant. Suddenly, the whole of America was involved in the struggle that appeared on the great national looking glass of television. 250,000 Americans gathered in all their massive glory at the Lincoln Memorial. Washington, D.C. had awaited the day in nervous apprehension. Monuments and landmarks were closely guarded. The entire police force was on alert. The bars were closed and the sale of liquor was forbidden. They needn't have gone to the trouble. It was one of the most orderly and peaceful demonstrations Washington has ever seen. It became apparent that day that this was no longer just a movement of black people. It was an American movement. Americans of all colors and classes, all denominations, from labor, the campuses, from every walk of life, were now in motion.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee." Sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. When we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last."